So, get this. What if a guide for living that's about 2,000 years old actually held the key to our most difficult, most modern conversations? Today, we're going to put an ancient text under a totally modern microscope, the psychology of communication. And what we're going to find is, well, a surprisingly new way to look at conflict.
You know that feeling, don't you? You're in the middle of a disagreement, and it's like the more you try to talk, the further apart you get. You're trying so hard to ask for something you really need, but all that happens is you end up feeling completely misunderstood, unheard, and just so frustrated. It's a feeling every single one of us has had, and it's right at the heart of what we're digging into today.
Okay, so where do we even find a better way? Well, our source material from Luke 11 gives us this surprisingly modern blueprint. When Jesus is asked how to communicate with real purpose, he gives a prayer that, when you look really closely, models this incredibly clear and vulnerable way to express our deepest needs. Now let's just, for a second, put the religious context on a shelf and just look at the structure here. What do we see? We see 4 fundamental human requests. First, there's a need for meaning, for purpose. Second, a need for our physical well-being. Third, a need for connection and fixing what's broken between us. And fourth, a need for safety and guidance. It's so direct, right? It's a structured way of saying exactly what we all need to thrive.
And you know what? This whole idea of focusing on needs and how we make requests, it has a super modern parallel. It's called nonviolent communication, or NVC for short. It's basically a framework that teaches us to look past all the judgments and angry words to find the universal human needs that are driving everything we do. This is the lens we're going to be using for the rest of our explainer.
But here's where it gets really interesting. After laying out this beautiful, ideal model for communication, the text immediately throws us into the complete opposite scenario, a raw, messy, real-world conflict. And this is where our NVC framework is going to get a real workout. The conflict just kicks off with this huge accusation. Jesus does something that some people see as healing, but others see it as something totally sinister. They don't just disagree with him, they accuse him of being in league with evil itself. I mean, talk about a communication breakdown. His actions are met not with curiosity, but with instant suspicion and blame. So how does Jesus respond? You'd think he'd use that calm, needs-based language we just talked about, right? Nope, not even close. What comes next is a series of incredibly harsh, judgmental statements aimed right at the people criticizing him. On the surface, it looks like the very opposite of a healthy way to communicate. Just listen to the tone here. Woe to you. It's so confrontational, so stark and accusatory. He's calling them out for obsessing over tiny, superficial rules while completely ignoring the huge, important stuff like justice and love. So, how on earth could this possibly be a useful example of communication?
And this is where our NVC lens becomes like a superpower. It allows us to become translators for these harsh, judgmental words. We can look right past the surface-level anger and start asking, what deeply held values, what really profound, unmet needs might be driving this language?
Using this lens completely reframes the insult. When he says, "You are full of greed and wickedness," the anger isn't just random lashing out. From an NVC perspective, it's what you'd call a tragic expression of a deeply unmet need. He's seeing this huge gap between their public show of piety and their private actions, and he's basically crying out for integrity, for people's insides to match their outsides.
Or let's take another one. The judgment, "You have taken away the key to knowledge," sounds like a pretty harsh attack. But what's the need hiding under there? It's this deep frustration. It's coming from a desire for everyone to have access to real understanding and empowerment, a connection he feels the people in charge are blocking.
But here's the thing about NVC. It's not a one-way street. To be fair, we have to turn that same lens back on his accusers. I mean, why would they make such a wild claim? Well, maybe their accusation comes from a deeply felt need for security and predictability. Think about it. Jesus was disrupting the established order, and if you're responsible for keeping that order, that's a genuine threat. Their accusation then could be seen as their own strategy to try and restore a sense of safety and control.
So after all this back and forth, all this conflict, where does that leave us? The text wraps up with this powerful metaphor that just ties this whole theme of perception and communication together beautifully. It's all about how we choose to see the world and each other.
Your eye is the lamp of your body. Such a beautiful image, right? A body that's full of light isn't just about being able to see physically. You can really understand it as a state of profound clarity, of self-awareness. and what we today would probably call empathy, that ability to see things clearly without the darkness of judgment getting in the way.
So, having a healthy eye in the context of this whole NVC exploration really just means training ourselves to see differently. It means looking at someone's angry outburst and trying to see their unmet need for respect underneath it. It means looking at our own anger and figuring out the unmet need for safety or understanding that's hiding behind it. It's a fundamental shift away from blame and towards empathy, away from evaluation and towards connection.
And that really brings us to the final question for you. This ancient text, when we look at it through this modern lens, offers us an incredibly powerful tool. It suggests that even in the middle of the most heated fights, behind the most painful words, there's a shared human need just waiting to be discovered. So the next time you find yourself in one of those difficult conversations, can you just pause, take a breath, and try to see with that healthy eye? Can you look for the light?